Imagine what Eugene Sledge that we talked about tonight, imagine what he went through on Peleliu and the tens of thousands of Marines that suffered that unimaginable horror. And then you imagine Hackworth, who we talked about here, who wrote About Face, assaulting enemy positions in Korea, and he was wounded over and over again and on the line, and still went back for more. And then you got Alan Seeger, the poet, who in World War I went over the top over and over again to make his rendezvous with death. And there's been thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of warriors that have been in very stressful situations and faced evil and faced death much worse than the situation I'm in or you're in that we might consider stressful. And I even did this when I was overseas, when I was on deployment, when I was a combat leader. I was feeling stress. And you know what? We took casualties and it was awful and it was heartbreaking, but there were other soldiers and warriors throughout time that have been in much worse situations. Gettysburg or Vicksburg or the Battle of the Bulge. And all those horrible situations, they prove really that humans can withstand almost unimaginable stress. Which meant to me that I could too. And you can. And the first step for me is doing that, taking that look to gain some perspective. And then in order to gain perspective, you got to do something that we already talked about. You've got to detach. You've got to detach from the problems or the stress that you're experiencing so that you can get that perspective of them. Now, there's a couple different types of stress. Now, if it's something that you can control that's causing you stress, well, why aren't you getting control of it? Generally, it's a lack of discipline. So you gotta have the discipline to grab control and make it happen. And when I say you need discipline for that, what that means is these stresses that you're avoiding, they're not gonna go away if you avoid them. So take the discipline to face the stressful situation. Get ahead of it. Don't be afraid of it. Now, there's also stress that's caused by things that you cannot control. And if you remember talking earlier about artillery and how horrible that was, and what made it so horrible was that there's no control over it. So if you can't control something, and you can't get control of it, you have to at least embrace what you can. And I'm not saying you're going to embrace artillery shelling, but I'll tell you what, when it comes to things like artillery, or for us in Ramadi, it was IEDs. And we could do everything we could do to mitigate that risk, but eventually there's only so much you can do, and you cannot completely eliminate it. But you can't control it, so why are you going to worry about it? Why are you going to stress about it? If there's something that's completely beyond your control, you've got to detach from it and not let yourself get stressed about it. And on top of that, if it's something that you can't control, how can you look at it in a different light? How can you see it in a way that you could actually take advantage of it? How can you take that stress and make it into some kind of ally? You know, the chaos of combat is something that I couldn't control, but I had to embrace it so I could try and figure out how to take advantage of it. So when it comes to stress, don't fight it. Turn it on itself and use it. Use it. Use it to make yourself sharper and more alert. And use it to make yourself think more and learn more and get better. And use that stress as a catalyst to make yourself better.